It's like the only time we'll hear Patrick's voice in the.
Could address a question.
He didn't
at some
laugh.
point, don't we?
What was that?
Egg them on a little
Address a
bit.
question to him at some
Yeah.
point.
Do you think he'd turn the
Right
camera
directly
on
to
if
the
we
camera?
did?
Ask him, are we really on?
No,
He's not
fine.
saying anything,
All right, well, I don't know where Mills is, but we'll get going. All right, meeting is called to order. Roll call shows that we have no Mills. It's the open forum period, so if anybody has anything they'd like to say, now is the time to come on.
I apologize for my delayed response, but I have been busy with medical stuff for the last 12 months. Mr. Mayor, last fall I proved you conspired with Roth to lie to the council and community about your sign permit, breaking the zone ordinance, cheating the people of permit fees, and lodging a slanderous attack against me. I was tried, convicted, and publicly condemned a liar and not trustable as the council went on to discuss new rules for addressing the council because you're honorable, elected, and trusted, and I attacked you with lies, as reported in the News Herald. That's what citizens read. Those lies still stand. I'm not a liar. You lied. Roth lied. The council lied or back lies. The Herald printed lies. Unacceptable. To hear you speak out against bullying and discrimination without taking responsibility, publicly clearing my name, is unacceptable. Concerning my complaint against Roth and Sirba Larson being told to break the zoning ordinance, I heard Kennedy say it in the meeting with Roth by his side. City Zoning Commissioner Beckwith informed the council they were told to break the zoning ordinance in the zoning meeting. When I have informed the council Beckwith would be coming to back my words, Roth, who I've already proved along with the mayor, misuses their power and position to straight-faced lie to this council and community, suggested Beckwith is not trustable, just as they said I'm the liar. Imagine that. To say it didn't happen is more lies, unacceptable, and I'm done with that BS. I've been passing out videos educating citizens. First, they see pictures of the mayor's 2 signs and 1 permit. As Ross says, the mayor has 2 signs and 2 permits. Todd Sylvester is a liar making false accusations, attacking city officials. Then they watch the council choose to conspire, joining their 20-minute slanderous attack on September 27th. Next is the October 12th meeting where I prove the mayor never had 2 signed permits, that he and Roth are liars, and the second attack against me erupts. Tracy's comment, "You got what you deserve," as she warns me about coming back here, resonates with mothers and grandmothers as they mention discrimination and the black kids who moved. Everybody mentions the Herald and WTIP hiding the truth, assisting your attack, and they are disgusted with the whole affair because they realize it could happen to them or their children too. You want to continue to hide this? Pay me to shut up. Otherwise, my video party is next week with well-connected techies. Watch Facebook and YouTube. They assure me your faces and lies will go about everywhere, including the state capitol with my complaint and regional media. Then I'm going to file a civil suit, and we'll see who the liars are. And we'll see what the damage to the coolest small town, local media, and your kids are, as your faces and lies grace every TV screen in the region on 6 o'clock. I used to ask. I've been here on crutches. When confined to my wheelchair, I'm all over town. Did you know I'm medically challenged? That attacking a challenged person adds to the severity of the crime and punishments? But me, you didn't even blink. The truth didn't matter, just attacking with lies that still stand. That's what about the press. That's why you're going to pay one way or another, because you chose to break the law, attacking me rather than be honorable. Why is Ross still employed? Denial. If you want to settle this, it's Scott Smith locally. Otherwise, ride your fast train of denial to the bottom, just like Tim Scannell did. And we'll see who gets what they deserve, Tracy. And lastly, Liar 101. Make sure it's not provable with public record. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Jennifer Stoltz, the General Manager of the Cook County Whole Foods Co-op across the road, and I'm here to talk about the parking lot. We knew that it was a flood zone and all of that, so I'm not going to go into that. I believe the city's doing what they can for the flooding issues. My major concern has to do with the winter snow plowing and sanding and care of the parking lot. Last winter, we had a flood sometime in November, and it froze and was basically frozen and icy the rest of the winter, which created a major safety hazard. I had one employee fall and get a concussion. She needed to take a week off of work. I also know that there were customers who fell in the parking lot getting out of their cars. I certainly fell more than once, even though I knew it was icy and hazardous. So just would like to make it more of a priority getting plowed. I know a lot of times I get to work about 9 in the morning, and on snow events it wouldn't get plowed until the afternoon, which by then the damage was already done and there was snow built up and it was dangerous. One reason I'm bringing this forward was I did an employee survey. We do an employee survey once every 3 years or so, and last spring, just after one of the staff mentioned the parking lot with specific comments, or 5 separate staff say, it has major weather environmental related issues. It's a problem. They know it's owned by the city and it's not the co-op's responsibility. They said it was unsafe in the winter. They felt it wasn't being plowed or sanded properly. And our plow person does plow, like the first row, ends up plowing part of the parking lot for some of our customers, but we're not able to do the whole thing. So would appreciate it. That would get looked at after this winter. And also, when there are flood events, it would be great if the streets and the entrances to the parking lot could get blocked off more quickly to keep people who don't know it's flooded from driving in, which I've seen happen, but also to keep the guys who are gung-ho about driving through and creating big waves. This last flood almost went up to our door, and that could be the piece that pushes things over. So thanks a lot for all you do.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer.
My name's Courtney Johnson. The city obviously has a vehicle noise ordinance because there is a sign on the east end of town by the Bausch property that says vehicle noise ordinance enforced. I live up by WTIP. There's no sign on that end of town. There was at one time. It was discovered in a ditch, and then it's disappeared. But I've gotten woken up at 5 in the morning by Jake breaking trucks. I work in a cafe that has outdoor seating, and I've had to interrupt talking because I can't hear what's going on. And I just think we either have to take that sign down or put one up over there, and maybe
We need to find that sign.
it's a
Anyone else? Okay, hearing no one, we'll close the open forum, move on to the consent agenda. So the consent agenda has typical 3 things: the approval of the meeting's agenda, the approval of the previous meeting minutes, and then the approval of the payment of bills for the previous 2 weeks. If there's something you'd like to pull for consideration, we can do that. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
I'll make a motion.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, moving right along. So we've got the Public Works Facility update. So you just have pretty much just a straight up update for us. We don't have a lot on the agenda for you tonight.
No, not really. It should be short and quick. Thanks for having me again. Just like to give you a quick update. The cold storage building on the exterior area is complete. There are a few finishing items that we're completing right now. The main entry door was installed last week, so it's sheet rock up to the door. They're taping it. It should be done Friday, and then we'll paint here for a day, not even that, 2 hours to paint it, and then come back to do punch list, so we just figured we'd do that. We have a few areas of vinyl base that's gonna be done Friday, and this ceiling tile, or the ceiling grid is in, and all the borders are cut.
Cool.
We just have to put the main tiles in, and that's gonna happen Monday morning. And we're cleaning up right now, we're doing all the floors and dusting everything, and waiting for you guys to make a mess.
Well, we'll get there. We'll
We've
definitely get
actually
there.
already started.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
They actually
Yeah.
started installing shelves this week, and the big move is gonna be Monday, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool.
So it'll probably be Monday and then
The next
random days
6
for the
months.
next 8 to 10 months.
Mhm, Right.
So, and the punch list is scheduled for Monday morning. A few of the late items that came to us was the fencing.
Mhm.
The contract's in process right now with Keller Fence. The Smittles are in.
Oh, cool.
And they're at LHB right now for review and approval. So as soon as all those get together and materials are ordered, we'll get that on the schedule for start installing posts and the base for the gate. And then hopefully during the winter, they'll be able to just string the fence up. So I don't have any timelines on when all this is gonna happen. We'll keep you up to date.
Okay.
And then pricing for the solar panels was received from Holden. And I think you just got a copy late this afternoon. I got a copy. I think it was around 120. That includes our electrical contractor and Midwest Solar. Because it sounds like Outback dropped out for some odd reason. I don't know. So as soon as we get everything tallied together, we'll review it with Mike. And I think he should have something on Monday when we do the punch list. So if you're gonna be up there, we could review it quick, and then we'll go through the formal proposal through the whole council on that. And there are a few outstanding items that are gonna be later down the road. Our window shades will be coming in around Thanksgiving. So
Oh,
that's gonna be
interesting.
about half hour or 2 to 4 hour installation, so I don't think it's gonna really kill anyone. And then hoists for the main beam, they're still waiting on some pieces for that, so. And again, that's gonna be within a couple weeks. And then I think we'll talk about videotaping of all the mechanical, electrical systems going through, walking through the maintenance guys that are gonna be up there working on it. And we'll videotape it, and I'm thinking probably a week and a half. We'll schedule that and make sure you guys are on site, and we'll give you a bunch of copies, so. And that's about it for right now. So if anything else comes up, we have our electrical inspection approved and our plumbing inspection approved, so
Cool.
we're there.
It's really getting close.
Yeah.
That's great.
I turned over the keys to Mike today, so.
Whoa.
Is it like one key?
Yeah,
Just like one key?
it's
That's
one
it?
key.
One key, but 25 copies.
There you go. There you go.
So, and your card access is up and running, but I don't know when the cards are gonna be distributed, and I don't know how that's gonna work, but we'll
Yeah.
figure that out in the next few days.
Great. No, that's really cool.
Great, yep.
Yeah, so do you have any idea about, so there's punch list items that you'll just be keeping working on until?
Yeah, I'm figuring
No.
the punch list should be really small, just a few items. I'm hoping a few items here and there.
That's nice to hope, yeah.
Yes. Hoping one hand, yeah, whatever. But I'm thinking that by the end of next week, all the punch list items are done, and we should be taken care of.
Cool.
But again, they're ready to move in on Monday with all their materials and stuff, so. So we'll have a presence up here in the next 2 weeks, because there's some additional work that was requested by the architect and the owner, so we just have to get some few things fabbed up and installed.
Cool.
Very good.
Sounds great. Well, if you need anything
Thanks.
from us, let us know. Otherwise, that's great news.
Another job next summer.
What do we got?
Well,
We got some ideas.
We'll work on it.
Okay.
Just a couple months.
yeah, we got a lot of other stuff we need to get to too. So
All right, thanks
Well,
again.
just for how well you guys, did up there. It
We
speaks
appreciate it.
volumes. It's
We appreciate
awesome.
it, so.
mhm.
And from what the guys are saying, they like what they're seeing, and I think they're gonna be very comfortable in there.
Yes.
Hope so. Yeah.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Or-
Indoor
not.
bathroom.
Have a conversation with them otherwise. Yeah.
So, and again, thank you. I appreciate you inviting us to the council meetings to give you updates, so.
Yeah. It's been essential. It's been really good.
Thanks,
All right.
Cool. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Next thing on the agenda is we have the contract for the soil and water. Just throwing stuff around over there. For the soil and water plan, or stormwater plan contract. We chose the middle contractor, who was Emmons and Olivier Services. The contract states that the compensation shall not exceed $83,490. And the term for the contract is from November 1st through March of 2018. Is there anything else that you want to discuss about this contract?
This is
or anyone
our
else?
standard service contract that Chris created the template for. So the way it works is the scope of services is attached as an exhibit, which is actually just the proposal that they did for us. And then the price is included in the contract itself, but it's also attached as another exhibit that's the breakdown of the different parts and how we're going to end up paying them for it.
Mhm.
So this isn't any different than what you've already approved. This is just the contract version of it.
Make a motion to approve said contract.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Wonderful.
You can just sign right there.
I suppose that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. So the next thing we have on the agenda is coming from the, sorry, I need to get back to my page here. Coming from the library board. They have, well, I guess we didn't have the name on a
No,
memo.
we didn't finish up the hiring process until after the packet went out. But we did have 4 applicants. One of them was an internal candidate who we interviewed, and Steve and Amanda are recommending that we promote. So Erica Turnus, who's currently a library clerk, we're recommending that you promote her to Librarian 1, where she'll be serving as the
Children's and Youth Librarian. Yep. So
I would
that,
make that motion to approve the hire of Eric Turnus.
okay, so there's a motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further? Yes.
Do you still have a choir teacher at the school?
Yes,
Oh, cool.
that's one of the questions we asked her.
That's nice. All right, that's it.
The
Multi-
library one
multi-talented.
position that she's filling for us is 20 to 25 hours a week. There is some flexibility in the schedule, but that's one of the issues that we'll be working on, but we're committed to having her be the choir teacher as well. So-
Nice. Okay.
Awesome.
So there's a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. Wonderful. Well, glad to have Erica on board. That should be pretty exciting. All right, so the next thing we have is a cost share agreement between us and the county. They're going to be purchasing a pictometry machine.
Yeah, they're not buying a machine.
Or they're just having it done.
Yeah, so if you read about
Have
that in the newspaper,
was
that's
wondering
not
about that.
exactly how I understood what's going on.
Fair enough.
They're paying a company to take some aerial images and then process them, and we will have access to them. So it's more of the images and data and the software that you can use to access the data that we're paying for. And in our case, we're actually paying for 50% of the cost of, and I'll just pass these around because what was in the packet was just a little chunk out of the
Yeah.
middle of this because I didn't
Yeah.
catch that it was a full plan sheet PDF rather than scalable.
Yeah,
But
so we got like this
Yeah, we
section
got
right
that
here.
we got a little
Line.
chunk right in the middle of downtown, which is really quite a beautiful picture.
I wasn't the only one that was confused.
Yeah, so this is the area that we will be contributing if you decide to go forward with it. That includes all the developed portions of the city limits, as well as all of the sections where we have the electric utility present, which goes a little bit east and west on along the shoreline. So the imagery that they'll be taking is two different types. One which is just straight top-down, which you're used to seeing if you use the county's current website,
Mhm.
although significantly better quality than, you know, a Google Map image that you might be. Which means that when they're flying over, they're taking a picture down, but they're also taking a picture in 4 different directions.
Mhm.
And then for each place, they will take the images that are kind of the best pick from each of the 4 different angles that you can look at as well. So if you look at a piece of property, you'll be able to look from the south, northeast, and west at an angle to pick up different elevation features as well. So you can see, for instance, what the shape of a roof on a building looks like, or how tall is that tree. You know, at least you can make some. They've got some tools that'll help you make those sorts of measurements using
Mhm.
it as well.
So this is similar to what you might see on Google when you do the oblique view on there. Is it better quality? Is it?
It's,
should be much
it's
better
significantly better quality than what you're going to get from Google. You know, they're processing satellite shots. We're flying an airplane that you know is going to take 3-inch images for us. So that's pretty small when you're looking at an aerial image. So what we use it for, and why it might be worth our while to contribute to this is when we're putting together reports on development proposals, for instance, we'll often look at aerial images to just kind of understand the current lay of the land. When we'll use it quite often to put together maps of our infrastructure as well, because we can actually see it, and it's just a lot easier to understand things when you get that visual piece as well. So for what I think is a pretty reasonable price of just under $3,000, we're going to have this tool that we can use, not a machine but a piece of software that has access to this data that is really quite useful in a lot of different ways for us.
So, a question: Are they going to be doing this pictometry for the entire county?
It's not every square inch of the county would get covered. They have a map that, if you want to ask Kyle up at the courthouse, he can show you. But
think it's
imagine this type of, you know, squaring off of the county and then covering all the developed places. So all the major roads with private developed property around them are going to be flown. They actually did this, boy, it was probably almost 10 years ago that they flew it last time. And so this is just actually a redo of something they have already done, but with better quality.
So
better
will
imagery.
this just take photos of existing structures, or does it take photos of that whole section?
Yeah.
Even though it's forested or something else?
Yep, they're going to fly a pattern, and they're just taking photos at a regular interval. And then when they're going to use their software to kind of process them into at this location, and you know the best view from each one at each interval that they're taking pictures from. So you'll have an ability to see a structure, and they'll have, you know, 5 different oblique angles that they got when they flew by, and they'll pick the one that looks the best, that didn't have glare, or, you know, just picked it up the sharpest. But you'll also be able to see the other ones if you want to kind of select through. That it's in the city. they will actually be able to look at any particular building or any particular property and get the best top-down and the best oblique, and it might actually be the same for you and your neighbor's property, just because everything's so close together. But as we get out further on the edges of our electric utility system, there's spaces in between that we'll be able to see pictures of as well.
And this will be flown with leap-off conditions?
That's what it says,
Yeah.
spring, area-wide leaf-off imagery.
Okay.
But then how often do they, well, assume the assessor would use it? I mean, how often do they do this then?
Well, like I said, it's been almost 10 years since the last time they did it. It's expensive to fly.
Yeah.
So I think the contract we looked at with this company, when all of the different stakeholders met and kind of talked and learned about it, was a price to refly it in a certain number of years or to keep it. But we know it's a 6-figure contract. If you've seen the number that was in the newspaper, that's the real number. If the description wasn't quite on the cost was, it's pretty
But
expensive.
that's a contract for the continuing upgrade, or like updating of those.
No,
that
no,
service.
that's kind of a one-time, let's get all this collected.
Done.
And I think the most expensive component of that is just the flying, obviously. The software and the processing is also rather expensive, but the flying is the biggest piece of it.
I guess part of what I think this would be really useful for us as well is that technology to along with this, it says it right in here, quality imagery is limited in the geographical area, blah blah blah. These are part of the suite of tools that are being used for remote sensing. LiDAR is one of those things that when we start doing our stormwater plan, that's going to be incredibly important as well, for them to show all of the contours of the ground, so that.
They're not doing LiDAR, though.
Oh, they're not?
No.
What was that?
No, they're just using it as an example of another tool that does this, that actually this complements.
Gotcha.
LiDAR does a lot of the things that we like, but it can't do some others, and this is a complementary tool for that.
Okay.
So they're just taking images with the camera
Gotcha.
that they designed.
Fair enough. Okay, well, my apologies for getting that wrong. So apart from, just getting a look at different senses or different parts of the property, what other benefits could we get from this?
That's pretty much it. Just the ability to look at and understand any piece of property in a spatial way, which is, I think, really quite helpful when you're thinking about development, to be able to understand spatially what's going on in a piece of property, what's going on in the neighborhood, but also then just for our own ability to look at our infrastructure spatially as well. So just to kind of understand that there's where our power lines are, there's where our manholes are, and with 3-inch imagery you can see all that stuff. So
I would see a value when we're doing the evaluation up Sawtooth Bluff too, to take that parcel of land and be able to have some very high-resolution, detailed imagery of that area. Right now, we've got some basic information, but I think that this would probably provide a higher level of imagery that could be used in that planning process.
So the 3-inch images that we're going to be collecting, that's not the level of quality that the county is going to be collecting everywhere, I think. I think that they were going with 6-inch imagery for the most part, countywide. So you're flying through a forested piece of property with nothing going on it. And so some of the Sawtooth Bluff area is probably going to be 6-inch imagery, which is still spectacularly clear compared to what you see on Google Maps. So it's great stuff. And yeah, it'll be useful. That's the same sort of development idea, that being able to look at that piece of property as we're considering developing it and just have the ability to, you can't even stand on the piece of property and understand it the same way when you get that aerial image of it. It's really
So,
just very
I mean,
helpful.
I don't have a very clear understanding what the difference is, because it talks about the 50 centimeter compared to this new 15 and 7 centimeter. I mean,
What's a centimeter?
there you are.
Well, there's the problem,
There
isn't
you
it?
are. I mean, I don't know if there's any reference to how that, could be interpreted, but I don't quite understand what the degree of resolution
Yeah.
or detail that provides beyond what might currently be available.
You can't understand it without seeing it, I think.
Yeah.
Just think about what sorts of things might show up on a you might be able to see a curb stop, for instance, just a little circle of steel in the sidewalk
Mhm.
at a 3-inch image, but you're certainly not going to see it at a 6 or 12 or anything else inch image, and you'll never see something like that on a Google map, with a satellite image. It's not possible. So when we're talking about, we want to be able to map a particular piece of our infrastructure at a high level of detail, and we don't have a survey drawing of it from when it was constructed, then we can actually look at these images and figure out where everything is. It's helpful.
I would have liked to see a curb stop earlier.
Yeah, you would have, wouldn't you?
Well,
You
so
probably wouldn't have seen that one.
what about, does it matter then against our timing for all this road work on Highway 61? Things will be changed and then we won't have that?
Yeah, I mean, that's like buying a computer, you just
Yeah.
got to do it. Everything's going to change.
There'll be more projects and
I think the county is really figuring out how to use this technology in a lot of different ways, probably a lot more actively than we will. And so I suspect that as it gets built into their business model, that we'll be doing it more often in the future.
We'll be doing
Reflying.
reflying,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so devil's advocate then, if they're going to be doing this anyway, would they just not do the city if we didn't pay the money for it, or
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they'd still fly the cities in the county.
right?
Are they going to do it at 3-inch instead of 6? I don't know. Probably not. But for $2,800, I think it's probably worth just participating.
It was 23.
Well, one of their arguments is that it can be used for assessment, purposes with the assessor's office, and they still would have to do the city anyway, so.
But they're going to do that countywide. They'll probably be, I'm sure they have used in the past for assessment purposes. I don't think you need 3-inch imagery to do that.
Right,
But no, I think it's definitely worthwhile at that price point for us to be a partner in this.
yeah, it seems like
Yeah,
it.
it's not.
And the imagery is great. They're going to do it, and I suspect they'd let us access it even if we didn't pay. But if we're a partner in this, then we get the software access to,
Right.
and then just, I think it's a better way to do it.
well, certainly I can
It
see
could
the
be pirates.
application with the planning commission, when we have applications come in and we have a map or an aerial photo that's brought in, some you can't hardly decipher what
Yeah.
you're looking at, this would
Right.
be
And we can just
really
put it on the
helpful.
screen, let's just look at
Yeah.
that piece of property.
That's the only thing I wondered about, like, if you only do it once and then, so somebody has done something, well, I guess they should have had a permit technically, but, I mean, how do you know it's still current unless you actually still literally go look, right?
Yeah, it's
Kind of still,
I think for the development evaluation purposes, it's as current as we need it to be. We don't need to see a picture that is live. So I don't actually want to watch somebody having a picnic in their backyard, kind of. That's not.
well, no, but I
But
mean,
like if they had a shed and now it's gone,
Yeah.
those sorts of details are. Yeah, you'd have
Things
to
to look
actually
at.
go take a look at the property on our own. But this is more of a just kind of get a feel for how much of the space is being used, or how close are they to the neighbors, or you can mark up one of these images too, and so you can see, okay, this is where they're talking about putting that building, and this is how close it would be to the neighbors. And so,
I'd like to make a motion to enter this cost share agreement between Cook County and City of Grand Marais.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll be interested in seeing these pictures when they're taken. You better wow me as much as they.
go home
say
and
they
clean
will.
up your yard.
Clean up your yard first,
Yeah.
Oh
right.
my goodness.
Have you seen the Google Street Views in town?
hmm
yeah,
It's kind of funny. I mean, they're old.
They're old. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. All right. So we have council and staff reports, unless you have something else that you want to discuss.
Well, we didn't put the visioning
That's
draft 2 on the agenda, but I guess I was hoping that people would have a chance to look at it, and that if there was a desire to have a conversation about it, it would be nice.
I was able to take some time to look at it. I don't know if you guys were either.
Not yet.
But basically, the chapter that they gave us was like the first chapter. You know, the how-to and the summary of Grand Marais chapter. And you know, although I can tell that they've been extrapolating a lot of their the parts of that they put into the document from the results of the surveys and things like that. I think that they tried to make some conclusions about our community that were not exactly accurate. But I think what we're talking about now is we're talking about the format of it, correct? And like, how can we make it a useful format?
Yeah, I mean, the content's important too. The format's what's dramatically changed from the last time. So the feedback that I gave them after the conversation at the council and a few other conversations I've had with other entities that have been involved in creating it was, it's way too long. It's too big for people to even read and give us feedback on, so how do we expect that we're going to be able to use it? There's a lot of suggestions, policy suggestions and ideas in there that haven't come up at all in the process. And so I don't know how we can adopt a comprehensive plan that says we're going to do this policy initiative when we haven't even discussed it as a community.
Right.
And then I really couldn't see a clear link between the vision and the values that were earlier established in the process and some of the content that was in the chapters. And I need that to be clear so that when you're looking at this piece of this chapter, you know, well, that it supports this value that we identified. And the other thing that needs to be clear is how does it come from the engagement that we did with the community. So they got that message very clear, I thought. And so now the plan was, anyway, a 2-page chapter, which is what's in here, kind of the entry level of what's going on, and then 1 chapter that's 2 pages long. And if we like that format, they'll do the rest of it. I think the other thing I would note is the chapter that they were going to do was land use. The other feedback that I've been giving them is even a term as innocuous as land use is pretty jargony and boring, and nobody's going to want to think about it or look at it and read it. So, you know, I don't think we should have chapters that aren't things that people want to read or that would be of use to people. And of course, land use as a concept is extremely important for future planning, but a chapter, yeah, people are just going to stop right there. So instead now they've changed approach, and the chapter is the value rather than some other topic. So chapter 1 is support and enhance local businesses, which is value number 1. Which that makes a lot more sense to me. But still, I think there's some content work. So I guess the most important feedback you can give is this format working for you? Can you imagine how you might use it? But then also, just content-wise,
Okay.
where is it at for you?
And you want it back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about why, because that
That's
might
fine.
not be realistic. And there was a fixed dollar amount associated with this project, and they've spent that in time, in staff time, and they're out of staff time. You know, they're still going to do this for us, but at this point, you know, they're not only not making any money, they're losing money on this thing. So you win some, you lose some, definitely. And they've, you know, said that they fully intend to give us a product that we're going to like. But it just works better, I think, when you both win some, if you know what I mean. That we force them into a position to continue to produce for us, and they don't have any budget to work with, then
Right.
it's
How
tenuous.
How did we get to that point?
Well, it's taken quite a bit longer than we originally had hoped, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Lack of feedback for a bit there, but
No, I think there's a lot of really core reasons why it's taken a lot
Okay.
longer that might be useful to go through sometime,
okay.
but probably not now. In response to this situation, they are trying to put together a timeline that is quick moving so that they can finish this project because they don't have any more budget to spend on it. So that timeline, even if we got this from them last Friday and we give them feedback by this Friday, and then they turn around and produce the rest of it by the end of November, and then we start our process of reviewing it publicly in December, and then sometime in January we start adopting it, and sometime in February it's done being adopted. You know, we're still 3 months out, and that's if we can actually look this over in a week and give them useful feedback. So, one of the things I told them was, okay, that's not only do you owe us this, but you also owe us a couple of other things. The most important of which is a plan to keep this document a living document. So some kind of strategy where it stays in front of us and we know how we're going to use it, but also how we're going to continually review it and keep it up to date. They're pretty confident that they're going to be able to do that for us, but that's more staff time. And then the other thing was, we talked about actually doing a specific piece of zoning ordinance. Technically, we did, but only by punting it, right? We didn't actually change anything. We haven't had a community conversation about it. There hasn't been any process about it. So if we really want to finish this, get a strategy for it to be a living document, and still get some work done on that zoning ordinance, we should probably come up with some more money. And they're thinking maybe another $11,000. So just to give you a ballpark, you don't have to make any decisions about that right now. Just putting that on the table. At the next meeting, I'll give you an actual proposal from them that says, here's the time and here's the money. But I just want to, if you're interested in getting one. If you're not, tell me and then we'll just keep going on. But otherwise, expect to see that.
Okay, so tonight I look at this over and tell you something by tomorrow.
If you can.
Yes.
Now, I actually think that it is great of job as they've done responding to our feedback. There's a bit of a ways to go. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it's realistic to think we're going to give them feedback on tomorrow and they're going to do the rest of the document based on that. It might take another 1 or 2 or 3 iterations before we're comfortable with it.
Well, and basically, so we need to tell them whether or not we agree with the way that this document is structured right now. And that's basically having the chapters be based on the community values, and then having the application of those community values to different areas of public life be subheadings underneath each chapter like that. Is that kind of what I'm gathering about it? Because I'm at this point, like looking at this chapter here, I have a hard time like deciphering how the rest of the document will look. You know, how, like, what is their actual structure that they're proposing? So that would be my question about that. And maybe we don't know.
Well, I think what they're proposing is this 2-page, the last 2 pages in this document. So that one and the one before it. That format being repeated 5 more times for the other 5 values.
You know, and I did go through this, and, you know, I mean, I think overall it's a vast improvement over where the plan was, but I think there's still some issues that we need, I think, more clarification or a better understanding of how this document's to be used and
Right.
function for us. You know, if you look at the last page, the policy roadmap, suggesting certain actions or considerations, you know, my view of that is that those are all well and good, but I think that that's also very limiting in terms of creating a scope that could be a lot more encompassing. And my concern is that people will see this and think that this is the limits of what we're talking about. And I think the limits are far greater. So I think.
Or there are no limits, are there? Or-
Well, I mean, I think there are, well, maybe there aren't any limits, but I think realistically, there probably are some outer reaches that we want to get to, but this is kind of like a small core of things that might be identified, where there is probably a sphere that's much larger of actions that could be taken. And I'm not sure how to get to that point with this document. How do we expand the thinking to take in just a larger view?
You know, part of how I think about that is, again, what your feedback was, Tracy, with the first document, that I didn't think we were going to get into that
Action.
action level stuff. And so maybe there shouldn't be any policy recommendations in the document.
That's kind of what my understanding was.
And that there's still some value that we should be gleaning from their policy recommendations, but I wonder if it doesn't belong in this document. So maybe there's a different home for it. And so here's a roadmap for you to things you can think about as you would, as a community, continue to work on these values that you've established.
Because a lot of these things start to make it feel dated to me. Like it might be good right now, but then if we want to use this for a long term, then all of a sudden some of those things might.
Yeah.
Boy, and I guess the way
But
that
they- There's certainly good ideas to maybe have somewhere else, or to get
Right.
your thinking cap on, but.
Yep.
And then the piece that was in that isn't anymore, and because content really is existing conditions, kind of a here's what's going on in the community right now. And again, the idea of that, where are we going, has to start somewhere. And if we're going to have some sort of report card where we figure out how we're doing on these goals that we've established, or these values that we've established, it's nice to know where we started from too. And so maybe we don't have the policy recommendations, but we do reincorporate some of the, here's where you're at right now on supporting local businesses at a little more strong level. It's in there somewhat, and there's some of the feedback we received in the engagement, but maybe we strengthen that part of it in exchange for taking out the policy recommendations.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like a separate document, and it's something you do every once in a while. You have these values that you use, but then you take a little review of where you're at and give yourself a grade, a report card, and use those values to see, and then you have new actions you take or don't take, but they don't have to be part of this master document.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing, understanding how council would use this document in decision-making. We've made a number of decisions today, and have we given any consideration to what the implications of this plan might be to those decisions?
And I think that's, at least when I envision it, the strategy for making it a living document is as much about how we intend to use it as it is about how we intend to keep it up to date. So how do we incorporate it? Do we put the values up in the room somewhere so we can look at them? Do we have them on our agenda so that they're always in front of you? Do you, we have language every time we look at a variance or a comprehensive or a conditional use permit that says that this is in compliance with your comprehensive plan. So do we have to look at the comprehensive plan every time we're doing that? But how do we incorporate it into the budget? How do we incorporate it into some sort of annual reporting on it? How do we continually engage the community with it? Those sorts of things as a strategy, I hope would answer your question as well as how do we keep it up to date?
Well, if it's a living document, it should be part of our consciousness when we're making decisions. And, I'm not quite sure how we do that yet.
Yeah, we're not doing it yet, you're right.
We haven't done it, and I'm not sure how we incorporate that.
Well, and I think we're getting closer to that, though, by creating the document as being more accessible, and creating a structure of it that isn't so legal easy, I mean, that's definitely something. I can see where they're going with this, like basically the first page of value number 1 shows this is why we say these things. So it's got a written summary, and then it says, this is why. This is what we heard from the community that supports, this statement about what we need to do here. And then we extrapolate from that the policy roadmap or whatever, whatever we want to call it, that says, these are the elements that the community and the council agree are the things that will get us there. And those are the things that will, that will help us to achieve this goal that we've set forward. And that I can totally see that as being really useful and easy to use. Because as long as you understand this is why we made that decision, and these are the things that we have agreed upon are going to get us there, then we have something to compare decisions against for saying, this will support one of these different elements of that value, and I can see that being effective, but I also wonder if that's too simplistic of a look at it to be able to actually have it be like really effective in the long term, because it could be that those the summary points of how do we do this, the policy roadmap sorts of things, could also limit things that are in support of that value. Does that make any sense? Makes sense to me.
Well, we have experimented a little bit with using the values in decision making, just a very little bit. And I think what I observed anyway from that, and this is no surprise, it's difficult, it's a little obscure, and the values are regularly in conflict with each other. So it's not an easy.
That's about the last thing I thought you'd say.
Yeah.
Both, that whole, like, the times that I feel like we've brought it up, it was very easy to reference that first,
Yeah.
the 6 values, and then how this fits within that.
And in
But-
each one separately, you can take one issue and look at one value and come up with some higher level anyway ideas about how that fits. But then you look at the next one and it's a different story, and they don't necessarily.
Every value doesn't apply to
But
every
and
situation.
not only do they
that-
don't apply, but they just don't agree with each other either. Supporting local businesses doesn't necessarily agree with protecting the environment. There's different.
But they're not mutually exclusive either. They might
No,
be
not at all.
right.
So that's finding the path that tries to find support of as many of them as
Sure.
possible is but that's
That's the
it's not
difficulty.
easy.
Sure.
That's difficult.
Well, and these values aren't necessarily complementary to each other. I mean,
No.
I don't think it was ever decided that we were going to use these collectively to evaluate
They stand
and
alone.
use as a basis for decision-making, but to recognize that these values have a role in the decision-making in some fashion, but it may not be all those values, it may be only some of the values.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that the more of these values you can draw into a decision-making process, though, yes, it's going to make it more difficult. But the same thing with what Dave was saying. I mean, a lot of these things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. If there is one way that we can accomplish something that will meet our values, and shows that it's a little bit more, like maybe it's a little bit more expensive than another way of doing it, or maybe it's a little bit harder to do than another way. Like maybe that helps us make a decision then. That supports the decision to go with a contractor like McGough instead of one of the others, so that we can be sure to have the communication that we need, and thus we end up with the product that we want instead of ending up with a product that's like, yeah, pretty much what we wanted. I mean,
Yeah, so you kind of weight them and
yeah.
put the common sense head on, and you got something to look at
Yeah.
to get started
It's just
with.
a framework that
Yeah.
helps you think about the issues you're supposed to be thinking about.
So the other element in here that I just have a question about is this framework for community health, just because I'm not sure how it fits with that values. I mean, it is a value, but it doesn't seem like it's necessarily part of this chapter or.
Yeah, it kind of just, that's what I was trying to, yeah.
Yeah, that's the structure still seems a little bit odd because
And
we're-
that one's the hardest fit still, I think.
Yeah.
The concept of it, I think, is is really good, and that, you know, evaluating the impacts in community health and decision-making are important, but how it fits into each of these chapters, I'm confused.
Where it's going for me is that, back to that report card idea, that we need to have some metrics that we decide we're going to pay attention to. And that healthy community framework, or take your pick of any different, the one that I just go to is the Blandon one, because I'm more familiar with that. These are the determinants of health in the community, and this is what makes, this is the features in a community that it's a healthy community or not. Those are the sorts of things we'd want to be measuring as we're looking at our values. Okay, this value is talking about these determinants of health, and this is how we're doing on them, so we have an idea of which things we need to be working on.
So in this case, health truly just means health, like medical, whatever, health, as opposed to a healthy economy.
No, I don't
right?
think it does, but it's not quite the right selection of things maybe to make that clear. And then more importantly, and what Tim's saying, what I think too, is I don't see how that links with the values. And
Yeah.
in that there's a little blurb in the chapter of what it means, but it's not really linked very clearly yet.
One sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, as they have their explanation of a framework for community health, reading those three paragraphs there explains what they're getting at with it, which I think is good. But I think they need to streamline that a little bit, because these 5 community health determinants are explained here and incorporated into every plan section, and that. I totally get that. Connecting to community health, there it is, right there in the corner, and that explains how they can be connected. It just seems like right now to me the concept is getting better. Like how they're structured, it is getting better, but the navigation is still pretty rough. Like it's hard to navigate your way around it and make sure that you understand what each page is trying to do. And maybe that could be easily solved by just putting a header on each page. Standardizing a form for each one of the chapters on each of the topics, and then but then I'm starting to get into stuff that we could do. I don't know.
Well, some of it is, we have to point them in the right direction,
Yeah.
When I look at that, I didn't go through it with total fine tooth comb. I looked at it, I just haven't had time to read it, but I'll be trying to finish and look at it more tonight. But I feel like it jumps. And even the symbols and stuff, and the speaking bubbles and those types of things,
Too much.
It's wait, is there there's no, maybe they all kind of tie together, but it's not it's a readable format. It's oh, I'm gonna my eye just jumps oh, this is a call out on a plan. I'm gonna read this first and see what this means, and then it's oh, is this the structure of on the page? Where's the main body that I'm supposed to be reading? And then if there's these a highlighted section in the middle of a paragraph that emphasizes a point, right, or a particular response from somebody that responded to all of this, that is whatever what is highlighted. But I think it's jumpy. I understand kind of what they're doing, but I feel it's kind of it feels like 1998 to me, and it feels like I don't know.
It's actually much more current. The jumpier it gets, the more current it is. People don't interact with information the same way now that they did before.
It's true.
And when people look at a web page, they don't start at the top left and read through to the bottom right like you do in a book or a memo. They do jump around, and there's actually kind of a pretty predictable way that people jump around too when they're looking at a web page. And so that's why when you look at everybody's web page now, it's this, Boreal's new setup. It's the same kind of designed to work with the way people are getting used to interacting with information. So I think that is just the way it's going to be. Think about the 75-page version of this.
Oh yeah, no.
Much more structured traditionally, with a lot of text
Right.
and a lot of writing, and nobody read it. And that's just what happens. So if we
It's
put
gotta
a lot
be
of
some-
text
well,
in
I
there,
see
it
some
flows
sort of
top to
balance.
bottom.
I know I see two extremes.
Yeah,
It's just-
No, this is far from the extreme. As a matter of fact, I think if we even went further in that direction, it would be more useful for
In the
me.
jumpy
Yes.
direction, and
Yes.
I would agree with that. But then I like my fear about that.
I'll
is
show
that-
you some examples and we'll see if we,
Okay.
My
take
fear
that.
of that is that if we start getting into that sort of thing, we're going to actually start abbreviating the purpose of the document.
that's
And-
okay. We don't know what it is. I mean, ask Tim and he's saying, I'm not sure how we're going to use this yet. And I just think that
Maybe
is, we don't know how we're going to use this yet. So let's make, first
Well,
of
I
all,
thought he meant this specific format.
but I don't think we know how to
Thinking
use,
of
what,
the
doesn't
whole
matter what the
plan.
format's going to be.
Well, however it's produced,
Yeah.
how are we gonna use it? What is the basis for incorporating this into our decision-making? I mean, I don't
Somebody gets
understand
a-
how.
We're all
somebody
going
gets
to get
elected, they get a
tattoos
copy.
together.
Well,
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah,
I just want to
there's
make
the
sure that it's
values.
something people are actually interested in reading. And, you know, the proof is they're doing it. They're actually looking at it and giving feedback.
Well,
That last thing wasn't it.
No.
So now we're getting somewhere because people are actually at least motivated enough to be able to interact with it.
Only bullet points and personal testimonies. That's it.
Neither one of these are on the website. is
No.
it? That's a little frustrating, I think. Do you think we shouldn't get, I mean.
We're not ready yet.
I don't think that
Feedback
these
is
are.
good, I think. More minds, I thought that was the whole point.
We took the last version and sent it, I would guess 50 people had their hands on it. And these are motivated people that provided content, that were interacting with us at a pretty high level. And 3 of them gave feedback. And maybe 2 of them actually read it cover to cover.
So what's the harm of just having it on the website then? I mean, why not?
I don't think we want to mislead people about what's happening. I think that if we showed people that other document, it might actually do more harm than good.
Yeah.
If you just say draft on something.
No, believe
Because
that
I was just
like-
going through the webpage and I was like, okay, there's this other stuff, but I want to get, more info. And so I think there should be, I mean, they don't have to just because it's on there. And if it says draft, I don't.
It had so many action steps, like we were saying, that we never even talked about, and that could just really start a lot. I mean, that was somewhere we'd never gone. And then you could get sidetracked in the point where we were just trying to look at format, not content, and there were all these things we said all of a sudden that were to be done that, wait a minute, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hear what you're saying, and I actually had a similar vision that we would just show all of our work all the time.
Right.
But showing a proposed land use map that no one's ever seen before and just go ahead and publish it on the website. And it's full of ideas that no one has vetted at any level at all.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
And I just
see the
think
danger.
that's a recipe for.
Including us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So then somebody's, they're going to come back and say that was our.
I mean, I
idea.
think this is a better direction. I mean, I think we're clearly getting closer to
Yeah.
a document that's gonna be usable. I think the question is, how are we gonna use it, and what's the format and style that we need to have this? I mean, they're not gonna keep rewriting this thing for us
Right.
forever, so.
Well, they might.
Well, yeah, but we're gonna start to pay more, and, we don't wanna pay another.
Well, here, maybe one way of looking at this is, what are the elements about this that we like and that we don't like? Because like, a couple of the things I don't like is the, like the food for thought sections. I don't think that that's supposed to be part of, I don't
It's
want
like
that to be
reading the cereal box, that's what I was getting
part
at.
of the plan.
That's what I get out of it.
I want them to take all their food for thought things and to tell us those things once we get the plan done, so that we can weigh those policy opportunities against the comprehensive plan and then make those changes. Like the growing need for licensed childcare, that sort of a thing. If we have a list of issues that we have in the community that were identified by the community that each of those subjects addresses, then those are things that we can then identify as priority topics. That sort of thing. That would shrink it down a little bit. That would make it more pure information rather than an interpretation, and that could potentially make it more useful as well. So those are the
Yeah.
things that I see.
That's good feedback.
I really like that they have some testimonials, although I understand that testimonials are dangerous because then the voice of few become much more powerful if you put them in a bubble box and say, this is what people said. So we have to be very careful about how we put that together. I do actually like the connecting to community health section. I think that in the chapter here, in this chapter on support and enhance local business. I do like that. I'd like to see how that is incorporated.
What would you think about taking this whole community health concept and making a separate chapter out of it, rather than trying to incorporate it into every,
Yeah. Chicken and
Chapter
egg
or value.
problem. You can't really, it doesn't, pick either way, it doesn't matter.
Well, it's a seventh value, maybe.
well, but I think when you incorporate it into that value, you're already starting down a path,
For me, the path that we're starting down is what are the metrics that we're going to use, and there's some kind of standardization of them across values, so that
Right.
we know that the values are great. They're kind of focusing in on the issues that the community told us to focus in on, but we also know that there's some sort of greater purpose involved here than just the things that the community said to focus in on now, the current events. But there's this just healthy community greater purpose that we're working towards. And so having that as a framework that kind of crosses all the different values and ties them together is how I see it
Well, that's
working
why I
in
think that
theory,
maybe
but I
it's-
just don't think it's there yet.
a separate chapter might be a better way to address that, rather than trying to incorporate it into each chapter. And, I mean, I'm confused by it, just in terms of, as you say, metrics that you use to measure.
Well,
Um,
and so all of those values,
I don't know.
So easily confused.
those six,
Sometimes
I'm
I am.
confused by it.
those six values are what our community sees as a healthy community, right? Having those values.
I don't know, we didn't talk
No.
about that.
No,
I
I
don't
think
think
this is,
health
I
came
think
from
this is
something
something
else.
entirely different than those values. This is using health as one of the factors that is
A
part
seventh value, basically.
No, because it's-
or an overriding value
Okay.
to
So
all of
from the
this.
But
American
community
Planning
health.
Association.
Yeah, community
Not,
health.
am I sick or am I well?
Right,
But,
that's what I
or
was
even,
trying to.
you know,
okay.
am I doing individually okay socially or financially? But it's as a community, how, you know, collectively, how are we doing with all those issues?
But
And when we
it's,
talk about supporting and enhancing local businesses, that's why we would do that. Because we recognize the benefits that local businesses provide to the health of the entire community. You know, that's why the engagement produced that issue, because that's just recognized that it gets us in a direction towards this healthy community. So it's that higher purpose again, rather than just the current events. Because when you engage the community, they're going to tell you what's the hot issue right then and there. Housing, okay, well that one's been on forever, but other ones that are more that are going to change over time. But, oh, sorry. Did you want to?
I'm still having a problem with the definition of health here, because to me it's more just health in a very traditional sense. And I think if this is supposed to be some way we use as a framework measurement for community health, I think that's a bigger thing, a broader definition.
I wonder if maybe,
I don't want to spend all night on this
And I
conversation,
think,
but
yeah, I agree, that's a, yes.
Because,
And-
yeah.
So before we make any decisions about it, let's look at some other options.
okay.
so this is, maybe this will help, maybe this won't, and then we can have them give us more stuff. And of course, this is going to be impossible to read because I'm writing it so quickly. But
Hold on.
yeah, no. But maybe this is the structure that we have. We have the community giving us all the feedback. All of that all of that input is filtered through this concept of community health in order to get us the six elements. So then we don't have to dwell on the community health aspect for each of the six elements because we know that it's there. But we have to represent that as being a part of the decision-making process that then got us to the point where we have those six elements. Does that make sense? Is that something that could that could work, or am I getting?
I think we have a
am I getting too
barrier
sidetracked?
in gaining understanding here, which is we don't like the community health lens that they've picked, and we don't like the way they've described it.
Oh, I don't mind it. I just need to figure out where it belongs.
I just don't feel like, I feel like if that page wasn't in there, that page with the community health.
Yeah,
And it went right from the community vision values and listed the 6,
yeah.
and then went down to value number 1. And it went through, it's
Yeah.
like, that makes, it's just like, what?
Yeah, right now it feels out of place.
Yeah, completely out of place.
And I don't, yeah.
Right, and I'm
I-
trying
I
to-
guess I didn't take that they were gonna put this in front of each one of the values,
No, they won't put it, that's just a one-time thing.
but it doesn't make any sense. I mean, everything makes sense, but it is not like a healthy community in the sense of like economic and social and health,
Safety.
right?
Yeah, safety,
It is
whatever, yeah.
straight up like,
So if we found a better,
yeah.
better
Exercise.
description for it, it might be easier to understand how it gets incorporated through. So I feel like that has to happen first. Either we decide to just junk it, or we find a better version of it. And then we can decide, does it belong in every chapter, or is it its own chapter? But first and foremost is that we don't like that one.
Well, it just
Well-
feels out of place, right?
Well, and there are a lot of communities that are using these health impacts as part of their planning and decision-making. And, you know, we had Blue Cross come up and talked about, you know, how to incorporate health impacts into, you know, this decision-making. You know, we've seen examples from other communities that have done the same thing. You know, I mean, I think we're on the right track with it, but I just think that the way it's being structured here is
Yeah.
really confusing. And-
Well, and yeah, it's not like there's anything wrong with it, but I just think then it needs to be a broader thing, because there's other things you'd look at besides your health, to make measurements or to see if we're on track. And yeah, just the way it lays out, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I just like to see more things
Yeah.
be part of what it.
They picked a model.
Mhm.
There are a dozen other ones. I think some of it will be a better fit for us.
So if we eliminated that page, that community health page, but made it a subtopic under each one of the community values,
I don't think it needs it, because if you look at the community values, 3 of the 6 that are listed
are that,
are they're in there. I
Okay.
mean, so I feel like if they address each one of those values, the things that they're reflecting on that page of community health will be, they can take all of that stuff and they can find their home. I mean, because they didn't just pull this out of the, I mean,
No,
active living.
American
I mean,
Planning
active living is in here. I
Association.
mean, you know what I mean? So like, why?
I prefer the Blandon model, and I think that's all it is a different model, but this one is much more physically fit health versus the 9 elements of whatever that
Strong
is.
talents or whatever. Right.
Yeah, that's probably a similar, I don't know, I'm not as familiar, but yeah, just that model is what I'm having an issue with. And I think, Trace, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, like this
It
is
needs to
too
be
small
broader.
of
This is
things I would look.
personal
I'd look
health.
at more elements.
Personal
more
health of the
subjects.
community?
Maybe it just
Okay.
needs to go.
Anyways, I think we all kind of get it.
Maybe it does just need to go.
Yeah. Well, I think community health's important. That's
Yeah.
just not
Doesn't
as,
sound like it.
Give me the Cheetos and the Pops.
Well, we're also putting all these eggs in one basket with this idea that this is a document that's going to be what we write now is for 20 years, which is not what we intend to do. And there is a point where we're going to cut ties with our consultant, and this is ours now, and we have to understand how we're going to change it. So I don't think we need to be too worried about getting it wrong now. I think we should just go ahead and assume that some of it's going to be wrong. And
doing it wrong.
that
Well-
we're just going to have a process in place to continuously
Then is-
update it so it
then
doesn't
less
get
is
dated.
more?
Maybe, yeah.
Because some of it just right away starts to date it, and then if you do have to, do a report card on something, see where you're at or whatever, you'd use something different, or maybe you'd use a tool like this health or someone else to help do that, to do your report card. It could be a tool, but,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, I think that we've probably beaten that horse pretty good.
That's the best conversation we've had about that in 6 months.
What about the policy roadmap and the making it happen? That was another, like it should, I feel like that should be a separate document. Like, I think those are great ideas, they're great suggestions. But like what Tim was saying, that once a person identifies, here's 4, try to think of some other ones, or, I mean,
Yeah.
it's harder, so
The thing I,
Well, not for this community.
maybe not.
the
Put
thing
4 on
I
a list
do-
and we'll immediately think of the
Like, those are actually things that could be done in order to support that. You know, and if those are generic enough and they're, you know, proven enough concepts, then those would be things that the council would be driven towards. And, you know, for this one in particular, encourage compact and contiguous growth. Like, yeah, I agree with that. I think most people would. Downtown preservation, yeah, I think that it's important to have our downtown be what it is. Fringe development regulation, business development, you know, like those things are things that would be hard to argue with, I think.
No, they're great, that's what I'm saying, they're great suggestions.
I don't know if I'd call it a policy roadmap, but maybe that's what we do. The what can I do to helps thing, you know, like, yeah, I think that's kind of hokey, you know. But
I like that.
Especially attending
You like
planning
that?
and
Go to the
zoning
planning
meeting.
meeting, planning.
Like, oh, you just lost everybody
Yeah,
right there.
there is.
Okay, they're done reading now.
I found it very exciting.
I'm sure you've been back again.
All of those, it was just the action plan that I didn't think was gonna be a part, and all those are great ideas, and I can't argue against them, it's just that, is this the place for them in our comprehensive plan? Is that what we wanna?
Usually, you know, when you think
Yeah, specific-
classically about comprehensive plans, there are policy recommendations that are included in them.
But, like, these four specific, I mean,
That type of policy recommendation.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
look at
the
our
higher
existing
level.
comprehensive plan, it says, you know, make sure that development is consistent with the Northwoods environment or something
Sure,
like that.
yeah.
Or try to have
Note
public
that.
ownership of all the property around the harbor, you know, so that it's kind of that level of policy recommendation that gets in there. And some of them are unbelievably dated now because
Sure.
it's a 30-year-old document.
it just rubbed me the wrong way, and when Tim said something about it, it resonated, so.
So
to voice that.
part of that is, again, this
Way to
idea
go.
that
Tim's fault.
we adopt it and it's what lives for the next 30 years, rather than, none of these have been vetted, right? The planning commission hasn't discussed any of these. They don't know whether they want to do this or not. But what if we adopted it anyway with the intention of, okay, well, these are the next topics that they're going to think about policy-wise, and if we don't like them, then we jettison them from the plan and we put something else in that we do like. We ought to be able to change it that quickly for it to be a living document and useful to us.
The only thing I really hoped concrete that would come out of this whole process, not just this document, was that, you know, the revising and updating our zoning. Because, you know, I know that's another, you know, bit of time and project, but that was the only concrete thing I hoped
Right.
came out of this.
I think we're all on the same page about that.
Well,
And then
the
after
one
this,
item
I-
we had talked about was that this process was gonna lead to something that was gonna address the issue of the big box retailer and, you know, the moratorium that we passed and
Commercial industrial zone.
changed the ordinance to basically eliminate the moratorium and
But that was the one, after that, it, just like knowing, we spent a lot of time and did very well on getting people's thoughts and opinions so that we could understand and make decisions on their behalf. And so I feel like we did accomplish that.
Yeah.
We have an idea of what people find are their priorities, what they value. So then after that, you have to approach each issue as it comes up. And then after this, some of this starts to sound like projects. And for us in this area, I feel like a lot of times it's something that has to be done countywide anyways. We wouldn't do it alone. And so it wouldn't be just a city initiative if we did it.
Yeah, that's right. And so 2 important bits of feedback that we've continually been giving our consultants. One, we don't want this to be a to-do list for the City of Grand Marais organization. It's not our strategic plan. That's a separate idea. We're going to do our own strategic plan where we think about the things we're going to do. This needs to be the entire community's idea, and the entire community is involved in doing these things. And in particular, we're going to talk about things that people are already doing and already energized to be involved in. The other important piece of feedback we've been giving them constantly, and that is getting closer to, is we're not the audience for this document necessarily. So even though Tim's question is valid, how are we going to use this in policymaking? Because that's one of its primary purposes. We want the community to occasionally be interested in looking at this too. If they're not, then you know, it's just another one of those plans that sits on the shelf and nobody likes. So how does the art colony, who's doing some planning right now, get to use a document like this? How does North House get to use a document like this? How does the senior center get to use a document like this? If it's not useful for them, then we didn't get there either. So if it doesn't quite fit for us, maybe it's because we told them we're not the audience either.
Well, you know, I think on that,
Excuse me.
from that perspective, it's great.
It's all good, and move on.
Well,
Time for council.
Well, let's pass.
it's like I said, well, I think I voiced my concerns and
If you wouldn't mind, all views that have had great
Writing
comments,
them down.
just email them to me
Okay.
so that I can forward those emails on to our consultants.
I think that's the best we can do. Let's,
Didn't Aiden write down what I said?
oh, yeah. Everything. Everywhere.
I'm just kidding. All right.
If we go home soon, I will do that as I usually.
If you're home soon.
What is that?
Excellent segue.
Okay, so are we all have homework? And our homework is to write down the things that we. And he'll send it to the consultants, and we'll get another.
Mind that approximately 5 tomorrow, I'm going to be leaving the office, and I will not be in on Friday.
AM.
No.
He's gonna work all night.
So I talked to you, I'm not gonna email you again, my comments, so. You took notes, so when we were talking.
Okay,
so,
let's
yeah,
move on.
yeah.
Use doodling.
So can we
No,
go
I
home
mean,
then?
it was
No. We have council and staff reports.
Are they all really important ones?
We're gonna do council and staff reports.
Jay's got
Can
something
we
to
vote
say.
on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mills, you start.
Park board meeting last night, and we set the rates, and a little different strategy, which I was really impressed with. It's doing a percent change progressively with the higher demand sites because they're in higher demand. And,
Progressively, how?
for example, the electric water sewer on the lake went up for the peak season on Friday and Saturday night at 9% versus, say, the electric water went up 1.3%.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's the most extreme example I
Yeah.
could find here. Off the bat there. So that was I think a really great strategy. Increased some revenues there, and just looked at different policy regarding peak weekends and having 2-night minimums on some of the peak weekends so it doesn't jostle things around too much with the staff. And there was good staff feedback too with just rates, keeping even numbers. That keeps it easy for customers and staff. And so it was a good meeting.
At either your next meeting or the following one,
Oh,
we're going to reconcile 2016's actual results versus budget, in particular at the rec park. So this, what we said earlier this year was we would look at the additional money that was made down there and put it to the uses that we intend to. So put it either into a rec park capital project budget or our own capital project budget or just into general fund cash reserves. We're going to do that for last year's performance. And we're also going to get a glimpse at what's happened this year, but we're not going to do that until after we're done. And that's kind of in preparation for making some final decisions on this year's budget.
the other thing I was going to say is we talked about the golf course in the future, a little bit of the golf course, and Mike is going to be leaving up there and has another year. And so what we thought was a good idea was to go to a turf school and do some headhunting for a replacement.
So we're going to start that next weekend. We're going to be down in Tucson.
Can you wait another week?
The Mike and Mike crew is going to
No,
Tucson
no,
for,
it's-
or you go-
It's in
you go-
Crookston.
you go-
I get to go to Tucson. They're going to go to Crookston.
I see.
Well, the real idea is we might have to hire somebody next year to work with Mike.
Train with them, yeah.
And so, we're going to lose a lot more money. So
Well-
we're going to have double the staff full-time that we've had there now.
Double the rounds.
So that's the current leading theory.
And,
We
and,
got some
and
time.
Mike didn't go to school for, you know, that, he has a high school diploma and then just worked up and learned it. And so having someone who's studied it and that's like what they do is, could be it's a unique situation here. It's maybe smaller than what they're training for, but it'd be great to have a young person fresh out of school.
Your phone disagrees, apparently.
Yeah, I should say so. Coming to the community. I mean, I think that's a really great, you know,
Good luck.
great shot.
Yep.
Right.
That's a
Well,
challenge.
that's kind of, and I asked, you know, might we want to have a community discussion about a plan B if this doesn't happen, because Mike's had a hard time. He's been looking for someone to kind of get trained in, and it hasn't happened in the local community. And, you know, maybe there's a fine line between having a plan B and aiming for success, you know. It's-
Yeah, well,
Shoot for the moon, I don't know.
sure, well, yeah.
But,
You
the,
never
but
know.
the park board thought that we should just go for the headhunt first and
Mhm.
see, so. It's fine with me.
Cool.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about the budget implications to that too. So that's a good thing to think about. Anything else?
No, sir.
Wow, sir. Anton?
I do not have anything to report.
Tim?
Nothing.
Tracy? Wow, you guys are so quiet. This is the one
She
that I
wants-
actually
she
have
wants to
things to
get
talk
home and-
about. And start working on her
Jay.
homework, right.
At
Eat my
dinner
dinner.
first, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have some things. Yep. So tomorrow there's an active living meeting where all of our joint powers people are going to be present at. Throw some dates out for that could work for a joint meeting. We could always shoot for a Wednesday night that we don't have a city council meeting. If that works for you guys, I think that was one of the dates that didn't have a lot of trouble with other boards and things like that. But looking at doing that sometime during the month of November. So that's
Really?
quickly starting to fill it. Well, that's what I said when I brought it up in October.
Oh, okay, well, that's
That,
different.
the
But I mean,
opposite,
now-
the opposite Wednesday doesn't work for me.
It doesn't?
No. That's when Beth has school board.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
Okay, well,
Okay, well, we'll have to think of some dates.
Maybe I'll make that work. Well,
We used to meet on Thursdays.
that could work.
Thursdays could work for me.
mhm.
Okay, so
Four.
I'll talk to the folks tomorrow and then we'll see what we can figure out about that. But I just want to let you know I'm still working on that. I have gotten a couple of proposals from people around the community for when we redo Highway 61 or anytime. There's this cool like 3D crosswalk. I don't know if you
Oh,
guys have
yeah.
seen this. That's painted. It's painted with shadows and such on it, so that when you approach it, it looks like it's 3D, like it pops out of the pavement. And there's
We were
been
just
some.
talking about that.
It's
We're
all
gonna
over
do it
Facebook.
on-
Is that something that
Yeah.
they use on Halloween, or is that just pops out of the?
It doesn't pop out. It's just painted like that, you know. But the idea was to get that
Perspective drawing.
a perspective drawing. Thank you. To get that put in place, and I thought that could be something really fun to work with. Maybe the school, like the kids up at the school, to create something like that, and to paint that on our crosswalk stuff. So, or on a couple of our crosswalks around town to see how that goes. So that could be kind of fun.
You know, yesterday's active living committee meeting also, we talked a little bit about crosswalk enforcement.
Mhm.
You know, maybe that could be something that would be part of that same conversation.
Yeah. Could, yeah, definitely. I think
mean,
that we
it's-
should, I think we should seriously take a look at it because it's one of those things that's really low cost and could be really cool.
We talked about the need for educational component to crosswalk enforcement, because drivers don't necessarily know the rules, pedestrians don't necessarily know the rules. You know, if they're gonna try to do an enforcement, training thing, how do we get the word out? Is to
We'd have the sheriff do those cool radio things again.
Or YouTube video things that
that
every time you
Pat
watch
does.
a YouTube video, it says, hey, know the rules or else.
There you
Yeah.
go. Now we're
Else.
talking, or else.
Or we're gonna stick
I
a
don't think I
seagull
saw that
on
one.
you.
I don't think I saw that one either.
No, that's the new one.
Okay.
Diane Booth sent me an email about some of the work that they're proposing for the community center, and they want to be providing some bathrooms outside. They have been using the Biffies, but they keep getting vandalized, and there's no way of really securing them. So then they were looking at the prospect of having vault toilets up there, building vault toilets in with the expansion at the community center. But we're not certain about how that would work with the city's zoning and allowances for that, because they're far enough out that where they want to put the vault toilets is far enough out that it would be prohibitively expensive to connect it to sewer. So I think that we just need to take a look at, maybe Mike and I need to take a look at what the rules are for vault toilets within the city limits.
With our new vision.
With our new visioning statement,
Right.
exactly.
Of course, we don't have rules about vault toilets. None of our
I didn't think we
ordinances
did, but-
use the word vault.
Right.
Outhouses.
Yeah,
I think
we
that's
don't have
outhouses.
outhouses either in our rules.
Incinerators?
We have reference to NPCA rules in our ordinance. That's what
Okay.
we have. And so if you have a lot that's big enough, which the community center lot is, then you don't need to be connected to municipal sewer. But you do have to have some sort of NPCA approved
Situation,
Is vault
gotcha.
toilet NPCA? I have no idea.
It is.
Vaulted toilet is permitted.
Yeah, there's an incinerator.
It sure is. Okay, so that, I think that we'll take care of that. I had a conversation with Mike earlier about this. The city has this fund that has some money in it. It's a storefront revitalization project or program. And since the EDA got restructured and the housing authority changed its structure several years ago, with the people who were working there and not working there anymore and all that jazz. The entity whose job it was to administer that program kind of dissolved and went away. But we still have that fund, and I think that it would be really good for us to take a look at that fund and to see what kind of good it could do in the community. Because basically it's a revolving loan fund for a specific topic. And if we find out what the strings are that are attached to this program, perhaps we can tailor a program that could meet the comprehensive plan or help meet the comprehensive plan goals. Like one of the things that popped into my head was maybe we make this a renewable energy program where people, business owners and such could apply for a loan out of this fund in order to make it accessible to them for putting renewable energy into their buildings and stuff like that, or to increase efficiency. Those kinds of things would make making businesses more efficient and thus less costly more likely to happen. So that's me bringing that up. I think that we should take a look into it. I'll probably follow up with Mike on that. But just so you know, that's something that I have been thinking about. I do think from the comments that were made here, the signage issue, we should bring that up with Highway 61. I will certainly do that at the next Highway 61 meeting that we have with Minnesota Department of Transportation. And then the plowing schedule. I think since last winter we got a bunch of complaints about the plowing schedule, about places not being plowed out before business hours and such. I think that it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to take a look at the plowing schedule that the street guys do.
So when you say we got a bunch of complaints, can you be a little more specific? Because that's not the way I remember it.
I received consistent complaints from a business owner in the business park, as well as business park.
So you're talking
It wasn't
about
a
one specific location.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think that it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to take a look at how the plowing is done and see if we can streamline a little bit. So, we know when business hours start, and in order to be able to provide that service better, that seems like that would be.
Well, I don't want you to, not be able to be responsive to citizen complaint, but streamlining plowing routes probably isn't a good thing for the council to discuss. You know, that's more of a professional plowing person role. To see what they've come up with, I think is certainly fair game to have them come and report to you on it. I don't think that you're gonna streamline it, so I think that what you need to do is just decide on policy outcomes, what you expect, and then ask them to put together a plan to do that.
Isn't that what you kind
Because
of meant?
that's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's, no, streamlining is a different idea than that, because what you're more likely to end up with is, you're gonna ask for a higher level of service that's currently being provided, and it's gonna require more resources to do that. Or, we're gonna have to take resources where we're getting one place plowed earlier and not be able to do that anymore in order to get to someplace else earlier. So it's not streamlining, it's shifting resources. So if you wanna talk about that on an outcome level, where you expect things to be done by what time, that's a good conversation for the council to have. I don't think you're gonna be able to really improve the system that
But we
they're
weren't gonna sit
using.
and actually talk about it.
No, not right now.
I hope not. Yeah.
That's what he meant. You just meant.
No, I'm
when the
not sure
people
it was what he
involved
meant.
would-
That's what I was saying, is that we know when business hours start. If we're offering the service of plowing, we should do what we can to make sure that businesses are plowed out if they're relying on city infrastructure before that, their business hours start. Of course, there are times that's not gonna happen.
And I think a general statement like that, of course, everyone agrees with, including our own staff that designs how they've been plowing, because it's actually designed to do exactly what you said. They know when business hours start. They actually know also when people start showing up and when people are parking in particular areas. And they have a lot of that kind of observation of how that works. And they know when they're going to be successful in a particular spot and when they're not. And that's how they've designed how they do their routes. So I think it's more about if there's a particular spot that you're not satisfied with the outcome on, then we can either look to shift resources away from a different place, or we can add more resources to get to that place earlier. But
Can I
that,
just say-
I think what you're talking about is a very specific thing, not let's look at the whole thing in general.
Hmm.
But if you want to look at the whole thing in general, we can do that. I'm hoping we're not going to start
Yeah.
picking away at it.
No, I don't want to do their job for them. I don't want to,
Yeah.
to micromanage that. And it might have sounded like that. Basically, I want to make sure that we have the right level of service going to the right places at the right time. So that, the folks who complain about how things get plowed come to us, and they don't necessarily go to the streets guys. So I think that reporting what we're hearing to those guys who do the plowing and asking them to be responsive to that, if there is valid reason to be responsive to that, I think that's relatively easy to do and pretty important. So, and
Just even that, the way you just describe it, I don't know if that, maybe I'm not hearing it right, but you get a complaint, you tell the street person to deal with the complaint that you get. That's not a good process. That's a bad process. That you have to take that issue in the context of the whole thing, and if that's a service level that's not satisfactory, council to say that's well, that implies again either we get more resources to do that or we take them from somewhere else.
which
So-
I think we're starting to go around in a circle here, because the schedule. So I don't see that it's going to be productive for us to continue to have this conversation. We have been told by people that the service level that is being provided has created an unsafe environment for their business, and that is something I believe we should work on addressing. I agree with you completely that we're basically making a statement of whether we want to increase resources or reassign them from one place to another. We only have so many plows, so much time in which to work with them. So with that said, I don't think that it's asking the world to say, let's take a look at how these things work. If there is flexibility in how this is being done, then I trust that the guys that do our plowing have the expertise about how they do their work, that they could work on assigning the resources to the proper places to reach that goal. So, I mean, maybe what I'm saying is said wrong, but I think that doesn't seem unreasonable to me. It doesn't seem like we're trying to micromanage or anything like that. So,
Well, in the past, when I've gotten plowing complaints, I'll say, hey, Mike, I got a plowing complaint, and then maybe he can pass it on, or he'll have a better perspective, or the streets guys will have a better perspective of, you know, how to deal with that. When we have specific complaints like that, that's a pretty substantial city business area, and, you know, we should certainly look into that, but it's, from a council level, it seems like that's about as far as we go, as we pass that on, and, you know, we expect it to,
right,
you know,
and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to
Oh, I
have
thought
them.
we
We
were
need to
looking-
have them. We need to have them look at it. Like,
oh, okay. See, when you said it before, I thought we were gonna.
no, I don't want to have anything to do with
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So are you suggesting that they address the concerns of the business park, or are there other complaint areas that are being raised? as
Well, I mean, they've got their
problematic?
process of how they do it, right? They've, like what Mike said, they've been doing this for a long time. They've got efficiency in mind when they go and do these sorts of things. There have been certain requests that people have put down. Certain of those will probably not be very hard to accommodate at all, in which case then they're not really a worry. You know, putting our energy away from clearing some of the streets to making sure that this is clear, I think is relatively significant, because this is a really big space, and it requires more equipment than just the. Typically, it requires more equipment than just the truck with the blade. Like usually, they use the front end loader to clear some of this stuff out here. At least when they're moving the big piles around to make sure that there's all the space for them. So, I don't have an interest in micromanaging this. I just saying we've heard these things. We're going to hear them again this year. If we start thinking about it now, before we have gigantic piles of snow sitting around, it's going to be easier for us to make a better plan than it is when we already have gigantic piles of snow sitting around that people are complaining about.
So is it sufficient to pass on those concerns and let the city crew figure out how they're gonna address those
Yeah.
issues that are raised, and let us know how
Yeah,
it
let us know
might
how
be
it
taken
goes.
care of? I mean, I don't wanna get in the middle of
That's pretty
this
much what I'm asking
conversation.
for. I'm not asking for anything other than that, you know? I mean, it's just, we've heard that there are things that could be taken care of better, so let's see what we can do to do it better. We meaning like the communal city organization, not us trying to tell people how to do something. That's not gonna do any good for us.
I do hope too, I mean, generally speaking, last winter was bad with all that ice and rain we constantly had. It didn't matter where you were, really. There was a lot of very dangerous places all the time trying to walk, and it's just one of those things about winter. Not to downplay what they said, but it was like
It was bad,
everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was bad.
I mean, all the streets were bad
Mhm.
for a period of time.
Yeah.
After
It's
those
hard to walk
rain
anywhere.
and ice events.
Yeah.
Isn't it just like super wet and then super cold and like
Yeah, that's
salt
always
wind
what
melt the
happens.
ice and
Yeah.
We'd get rain and then it would get to be like 10 degrees.
ice NATO?
Okay, so otherwise I went to a creative economy meeting, discussed more things about the Coast Guard station and about a city arts commission sort of structure. And I also attended the school's special meeting regarding the bullying and racial harassment that happened at the school, and it was very good to hear the things that they're putting in place up there. There is a lot of work to be done on that topic, and the community is still very, very raw about it. So that's going to be a work in progress for quite some time. But that's all that I had. Anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Can I add one thing?
Ooh.
Oh.
Mills,
Right under the
He mills dust.
Okay, I'll, no.
You really? Just want to remind everybody that Monday is Empty Bowls Day, noon lunch and evening supper. It's to support the hunger programs in the county, food, mostly for the food shelf, but school programs also, and you're available to participate in any way. Take advantage. Thank you.
Should we post it?
Are you making any soups, Tim?
I'm not making any soups, probably serving
Serve it,
a
need
bucket or two, probably.
I'll go eat it.
I painted a bowl.
All right, anything else? We are adjourned.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Send out today.